Your Excellency, thank you for having us today. Let me start with what happened 2 months ago when France, Denmark, the Netherlands decided to postpone the opening of the EU negotiation talks with Northern Macedonia and Albania. Shortly after, French President Emmanuel Macron came up with a reform proposal regarding the EU enlargement process, which was far from welcome by most of the EU member states. Given your experience, what is your take on the future of the EU enlargement process?
Look, we consider the enlargement policy as one of the most important common European policies. We think that the European Union needs success stories, and enlargement definitely can be a success story. Maybe this is not the most sophisticated approach you ever heard, but we think that the more we are, the stronger we are. And when it comes to the Western Balkans area, it's obvious that it's not normal that if you look at the map, you see European Union, then not European Union, and European Union again. So we should integrate that area, which would have a very, very positive economic impact, given the fact that even nowadays European Union is the #1 trade and investment target and vice versa for the Western Balkans. And so economically we could definitely benefit from that. Second, security-wise, it would be very important to integrate these countries in order to tackle the migration crisis and the migration pressure, which you have been challenged with for the last now 5 years. The more we can integrate these countries, the more we can strengthen them, and the more we can make sure that no additional migratory pressure would reach the European Union through the Western Balkans area. And you know, as the British are leaving, this is going to be the first time ever in the EU's history that in case of a change regarding the number of the member states, it's going to be a decrease. We should come back to the path of increasing the number of the member states. And without integrating the Western Balkan countries, European Union would suffer a strategic loss for sure, politically, economically, and security-wise as well.
Apart from Turkey's further shift from EU values and accession process, how do you see the EU dealing with Turkey, which keeps posing foreign policy challenges to Brussels in Syria, the Eastern Mediterranean, and now increasingly in Libya?
Look, I think here we have to concentrate on our own interests. And the most important interest of ours is our security interest. So when it comes to the security of the European Union, currently it is at big stake in the hands of the Turkish president. And this is based on a European decision. When the European Union made the migration deal with Turkey, deciding to pay billions of euros to the Turkish to keep hundreds of thousands or even millions of migrants on Turkish soil and not to allow them to come to the European Union. There would have been other solutions. For example, strict border protection, building European capacities to gain back the control over the external borders of the European Union. This was not the decision. The decision was that we pay to Turkey. And if this was the decision, then we have to make sure that this deal works in the future as well. And the Turkish president made it very clear to the Hungarian prime minister that he would have two options. One, to open the doors towards Europe for the millions of migrants staying on the territory of Turkey, or to make it possible for them to return to Syria. So I think when we deal with Turkey, we have to take this into consideration, that our security is mostly in their hands. And that's why a balanced approach should be applied in this regard.
The Normandy Format Summit in December 2019 achieved mixed results with some progress made, including increased OSCE monitoring and prisoner exchanges, but tensions between Russia and Ukraine remain high. How can the EU reboot the peace process in the Donbas? And secondly, the EU re-extended its sanctions against Russia. Would any internal or external factors lead Hungary to change its sanction policy on Russia?
No, we're not going to change our policy. So as we have never broken the European unity on this issue, we will never break it. We have always approved the rollover of the sanctions, although we have always highlighted that some honest discussion should be held within the European Union in order to understand, for example, how the German-Russian trade has increased by 56% within 1 year, how the French-Russian trade has increased by 40% within 1 year, how Italian-Russian trade has increased by 37% by 1 year. But I think when it comes to Russia, the most important thing is that we should somehow come to a situation where an east to west, west to east dialogue could be relaunched in on a basis of mutual respect, mutual trust and respect towards international law. Because what we see is that the big Western European countries are having very tight relationship with Russia. Of course, above the surface, there's a, let's say, harsh criticism, but under the surface, they make enormous deals with the Russians, so it's a little bit hypocritical, to be honest. So I think an honest discussion within the European Union about the relationship to Russia and to the whole Eurasian Economic Union should be necessary. But in the meantime, I have to tell you that we absolutely stand for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. We are a neighboring country. Our interest is Ukraine to be strong and prosperous when it comes to economy. We have 150,000 Hungarians living there. So the stronger and the more prosperous the future of the Ukraine is the better for the Hungarians there as well. Although we really hope that the current Ukrainian leadership will give back those rights to the Hungarians which were violated by the former administration. We hope to have high-level contacts as soon as possible with our eastern neighbors, and we hope that we will be able to relaunch, reset the bilateral relationship. The sooner the better.
Considering the U.S. withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018 and Iran's rollback on commitments after the killing of General Soleimani, what do you think the EU should do in order to save the nuclear deal and avoid further escalation between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, we are a small country, so we are definitely not going to be the game changers in this regard, and that's why we don't really urge anybody to do anything here, because who we are to urge. But what we think is that it has been proved during the last years that whatever happened on the Middle East had a direct impact on the European security. So that's why our very clear interest is to de-escalate and to ease the tensions in the Middle East. We strongly reject that the number of countries having nuclear weapons would increase. So there are international regulations which fix the number and the list of companies that can have nuclear weapons. We strongly reject this list to be extended. And in the meantime, we think that the anti-terror fight should be continued. Challenge regarding ISIS is not over yet. ISIS just changed tactics and pose a huge security threat globally, but in Europe as well. So we hope that all these aspects can be met somehow, and we hope that the tensions will be eased as soon as possible in the Middle East.
As the Israeli people will elect a new parliament in March, many argue that the outcome of these elections might lead to a major shift in the EU's relationship with Israel. In the past, the EU has criticized Israel's policies, such as the settlement expansion. But now we have a new European Commission and Council in office, which aim to promote a pragmatic and strategic approach in the EU's external action. Taking this into account, how do you see the development of the EU-Israeli relations in the coming years?
Look, here we represent a little bit different position than the mainstream. If I look at the voting patterns of other countries in the UN regarding issues with Israel, we rather belong to the minority, together with the US and some other countries like Brazil. We really do think that Israel deserves a fair and balanced approach. So we don't really see the value, or don't really see the significance and the sense of those resolutions, conclusions, whatever, on behalf of European Union or any other international organizations which only concentrate to bash the Israelis, because this definitely doesn't help. I think if the new Commission carries out a pragmatic policy towards Israel, that would be good news. They should carry out a policy which would really be balanced, which would really look onto this issue from a practical perspective, what helps to resolve the situation must be supported. What doesn't help to resolve the situation should not be supported and should not be done at all. So we always consider Israel as a strategic ally of Europe when it comes to security, when it comes to fight against terror, and Israel will always receive our support when it comes to international organizations, when it comes to cooperation. And I really do hope that the new Commission will not commit a mistake like the Commission before, which has not convened EU-Israeli Accession Council for years.
Your Excellency, thank you for this insightful exchange.